This is Antic, the Atari 8-Bit podcast. I'm Kay Savitz. Jim Leiterman worked at Atari from April 1982 through March 1984 in the research group under Alan Kay. His various projects included software for Project Puffer, an exercise bike peripheral for the Atari 800, an 8-player Hammurabi game, and an unreleased port of the game Warlords. He created a symbolic disassembler, which he used to port the game Kangaroo from the Atari 5200 to the Atari 800. That version of Kangaroo was released by Atari Program Exchange in the fall 1983 catalog. Prior to Atari, Jim was a programmer at Horizon Simulations, where he worked on Shadowhawk 1, a futuristic game of spacefaring piracy. This interview took place on July 12, 2021. Be sure to check out Jim's website, where he posted some photos of the hardware and software that we discussed.
Basically, my dad was an electrical contractor, and he had this garage full of relays and switches and other stuff, but no tools. Those were in his tool belt. I would go to the store, I would sneak his a little screwdriver out of his tool belt at night and forget to put it back in the morning, get yelled at in the evening. But would build projects in third grade. I'd be drawing schematics. I did not know about the transistor, but I knew all about diodes and switches. And I'd be trying to build basically a calculator with diodes and switches. The math teacher come by and go, "What are you doing?" And I would be drawing really, really small stuff. That migrated into repairing computers. It's a long story, but I was one of the first ones to be repairing Atari. Well, not the first one, but I worked for Byte Shops Northwest, which was in Beaverton, Oregon, which turned into Northwest Computer Support. And I used to repair Atari equipment, used to repair all the PERSI disk drives, and this was the S100 days for the Northwest, write diagnostic software. And I was the president of the Portland Atari Club.
Oh.
And then I got a phone call asking me, do I know anybody who would like a job making video games? Me. And basically was a recruiter. The first time I ever dealt with a recruiter. And they relocated me to, I can't remember where it was, Southern Oregon. Anyway, somewhere down Southern Oregon. It'll come to me.
I think it was in Medford.
Yeah, that sounds about right. By the way, I have two Great Pyrenees. If you hear barking, somebody's walking by.
Great.
My office is actually a toy hauler I bought just for my company back when people paid their bills. And it's special set up as an office. So I'm like in the backyard. And anyway, backing up for a second, along with writing diagnostic software, I wrote disassemblers, ripping this, and I got better and better over time. Basically ripping, and the one processor I focused on was the 6502. So it would rip the 6502 and then turn it into assembly code that was compilable. And then over time, made them symbolic disassemblers by teaching them the definitions of the platforms themselves. And I had also reverse engineered the Atari 2600. Ripping cartridges, looking how they worked, look at the code, seeing good code, bad code, that kind of stuff. Anyway, Horizon Simulations. First project out of the chute was Shadowhawk 1. This was for the Atari computer. We used, one of my dogs just came in. We used Bill Budgie's 3D software. Basically, it was 3D on a 6502. How do you do that? Basically, it was 15-degree rotational table lookup on all three axes. My understanding is he had tried to put it on the Atari, had trouble doing that. Apple kind of had more memory available. I reverse engineered his stuff, figured out how it worked. And so I made that the engine. And it was a couple of us on two of us on the project as the programmers. But basically I did the 3D part of it, getting that all working. And so we actually had 3D vector spaceships flying around on our 2D screen. And that was Shadowhawk 1. Think of Star Raiders, Star Black. I don't remember the name now. The thing with the asteroids coming at you, and they got bigger as they got closer to you, and you were shooting at them, that kind of. Anyway, and then after that, I reverse engineered the Mattel in television while I was there, and then started on a new game. But then the company went boom. Called the recruiter. They got me that job, and then on my way back, they got me 3 interviews. Well, technically, they got me 2 interviews. Friends took me to the airport, jumped on a plane, flew to Atari, and was interviewing with corporate research, Alan Kay's group. And while I was there, CoinOp got really upset because they had jumped the gun. They sent somebody over and pulled me over to the CoinOp division and interviewed me there because they had planned to bring me in next week. And then went back, finished my interviews there, got on a plane, flew back to Portland Airport. My friends met me at the airport. We had dinner, got another plane, flew to Chicago, Illinois to interview with Paul Glass and Associates. They were doing some kind of a Bally Midway at that time, or something like that. And everything was covered with blankets, so you could see really what was going on. And so you're just getting a little, it's go. Then I called a recruiter, okay, depending on what they're going to pay, these are my first, second, third choices. Well, all 3 companies went with me, wanted me, and I went with corporate research, which was Alan Kay's group.
Why did you pick that group?
Cool stuff. Plus the CoinOp, the hardware experience I had was not sufficient to repair computers and repair video games and things, but not sufficient to really design the analog hardware that goes into those things. And so basically I get corporate research hired me an associate research engineer. Some of this building that's owned by Bushnell, who no longer owns Atari, 1196 Borregas, 2-story building full of PhDs and master's degrees. And I'm just this little minion guy in there. Originally helping out and then basically letting work on his own projects, or somebody come with an idea and I'd build the project. And it was pretty cool. Lots of people working on cool stuff. Dixon Brothers working on robotics and Omni Ball, and anyway, lots and lots of stuff. And they were these Project Puffer, which was exercise stuff, Project Hummer, pitch correction on a musical instrument, all sorts of really, really cool blue sky stuff.
Nice. All right. So we're going to talk about all of that, but what did you do when you first got there? What was like your first project or first day sort of thing?
I really do not remember.
Okay.
I gotta look at my own resume now. Jesus, actually more like look at my website to refresh my memory. Yeah, I honestly don't remember. I was assisting with one project. That's all I remember. And then eventually they let me work on my own projects. Somebody came up. Actually, I was assisting with Project Puffer.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody came up with the idea. I actually went down on my own, was talking to doctors who did carpal tunnel syndrome at the time, which is a relatively new thing, and made design, wrote documents, and they made design changes to the Project Puffer from a rotational kind of thing to more of a button thing. Because it's too much stress on the wrist.
All right. So Project Puffer was the project basically to graft an exercise bicycle to an Atari 800 and allow you to pedal, and it would show scenes that would change, for instance, as you exercise on the machine, right?
Yeah. Basically, somebody was saying, well, we should put pole position on this thing. So I reworked because I was able to rip it. I reworked controls for pole position. And we were playing the 800 pole position on the exercise cycle. And then I was like, oh, let's do some other games on this. So I did, everyone liked, Star Raiders, the one with the bloody missiles. They expanded as they're coming at you.
Yeah, Star Raiders. Yeah.
Thank you. And so I made one called Tumbleweeds. Now the thing is, you're pedaling along and you speed up and you slow down and you turn to avoid them. But the problem is that it's too easy to fall off a bike. You're speeding fast, you're getting in the game, and you're trying to duck the tumbleweeds, and down goes the machine with you with it.
Hmm.
And then I did another game, River Raft. Activision did some game with a little boat down a river avoiding sharks and things.
Okay, so Activision did River Raid,
Okay.
written by Carol Shaw, and then you're an airplane, not a boat, and you've called your thing Riverboat Game.
Yeah, probably for lack of a better term.
Sure.
But basically, it was the same idea. As you're paddling, the paddle wheel turns in the back, and you had little critters. It was more like a demo, but you could get on it, you could ride it, and move back and forth. You weren't really firing anything. You're just avoiding getting eaten. That's all.
Nice. So, I know this was never released. How close was it to being a released product, or was it just like a demo at Atari that people? How did it fare at Atari?
It was a demo I wrote from scratch that made the game fun. Because these were all proof of concept stuff. We weren't designing end products. We were designing possible products.
Sure.
Being corporate research.
Yeah.
And the demise of Atari came too early for lots of cool stuff to be hit the road. And then I built other games. It's like while I was there, I had designed and had a 3D artist put it in the CAD/CAM system, and basically aspect ratio corrected graph paper. So if you drew a circle on the graph paper, it would be a circle on the screen, because back then Atari pixels were 320 by 200, 240, and they were not square, they were rectangular. And one thing I also did, and I also put the timing on it, on the graph paper. And we actually produced like, I don't know, 4 reams, 4 big size. I think they were like D size, which is really too big, so it's C, and 2 at B, which is really too small. Wound up giving them to a school as graph paper to draw artwork on after the fact. The other thing was I stumbled across an old faded blueprint, which was the antic timing for the antic chip. And I actually went to I cleaned it up, added more information, gave it to the CAD/CAM people. They basically cleaned it up, and it's something that's even available today on my website. You can actually download and use it because with that, I knew all the graphics resolutions of the antic chip, even the ones that were not published. I knew all the critical clock cycle timings for the chip. So there's something on the 2600 called kerneling, and where you could actually, basically you only had like 2 players and 2 missiles, and you would per scan line, and you would do a display list interrupt to cause it to change colors for the next line. They got more smart about it. The first one was like the ghost. They would pulsate on and off as they're swapping cycles.
Flicker, right.
And then they go to reincarnation, where they got smarter, where you could, if you did the timing right, you could actually do more than one in the same line, kind of thing. And I used the same technology in my version of Warlords. Basically took the Warlords coin operands, dumped the graphics, remapped the graphics in something, but it was way too big resolution, and basically redid it and did my own version of the reincarnation, and in a graphics mode that was not standard. And you actually had 4 castles in different colors. You had the shield going around in the corners for 4 players. You had the dragon flying through the middle of the scene. All high resolution for the Atari, and all people going, how in the world are you doing that? I was displaying more colors on the line that was supposedly possible. And anyway, that was like one of my last projects with them.
Nice. Now, I don't think that was released as a commercial product, but I think it leaked.
But it did get me my job, helped get me my job over at Lucasfilm.
Nice. Cool. So you did the Warlords, and then I want to talk about Kangaroo.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So
Technically, I didn't write it.
right. So it was written by General Computer Corporation for the 5200, right?
Right.
Who was not contracted to make a 400 800 version.
Correct.
But then you made it happen. Tell me about that.
Okay. Basically, this is unreal. It should be on the 800. This is a cool game. So using the reverse assemblers I had built, I ripped the game off the 5200, reworked it so it worked on an 800, and because it legally was not my game, actually it was published through
Atari Program Exchange.
thank you, Apex, and and I don't know how well it sold there and stuff. But the funny thing is that about a year later or so, 6 months later, they actually released the official Kangaroo. Now you can tell mine from the one I did from the one that General Computer released, or Atari released for the 800 officially, because mine I error corrected the fruit color. So my strawberries are strawberries. They're not purple.
Well done. Yeah, it was strange to me that there was no credit because most of those APX programs were credited, but I understand you didn't want credit.
It wasn't that I was trying to hide. It was that I didn't write the game. There's ethics involved and stuff, and the ethics is I didn't write it. I just happened to help port it. That's
right. And you ported it using this reverse this disassembler that you had made. Tell me
right.
about that.
Basically, it was a program that ran on the 800, and its job was to read in the binary and convert it into assembly code that was assemblable. And then over time, they became smarter because I taught them the symbolics. Basically, you've got like the Pokey chip and the other chips, and they have names for all the registers. So use those names, which actually makes the code more readable. And as you're examining the code, you can see things like where data is because the code is gibberish. Even if it's skewed, it's still gibberish. Or you can see that it is actual code. And you clean up around it. You can see jump tos, and you label them. And you basically you're trying to find every little bit of code and make sure everything's mapped correctly. If it crashes, you're not done yet.
Those functions you just mentioned, I mean, they're super standard now, but you must have been one of the first people to do that.
I have no idea. I do know that I didn't create the header file. Somebody before me created a header file, and all I did was take that and create a bigger and smarter one. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that's available on the internet somewhere. I've seen my name still on it.
Nice. Let's talk about your 8-person Hammurabi game.
Oh, how about that? Okay, this was oh boy, he'll kill me. Not Chris Crawford.
Yep, Chris Crawford.
Chris Crawford?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this was a Chris Crawford project. The Atari had a 850, which had 4 serial ports. So I basically went in and hacked the 850 so that changing its ID address so that I could have 4 more serial ports. So it identified itself as just another box plugged into the little daisy chain. And basically it was a Hammurabi game, but 8-player. And one of them basically was the master. Mm-hmm. And the idea is you had other computers. So one computer had all these 850s had 2 850s connected to it, and all the other players had just a single 850. And they would basically be the slaves talking to the master, and you can play a Hammurabi game. But 8 of you, so Octarabi.
Octarabi. Um,
It didn't quite get finished. It was a proof of concept thing, but we proved it could be done. But we had a hack at 850 to do it.
so did you have a lab there set up with 8 Atari 800s connected with 9 850s and running this thing?
No, my office wasn't that big. Originally, I had a reasonable size, but then they kept shuffling offices around, and I went from a cube to an actual office with a door. Maybe it was a little too loud. I don't know. But it was much smaller. But no, you've got it like 2 or 3, and you've got one acting as the master. Again, it's proof of concept. If they're working, then you should be able to unplug and plug into another port, and it'll still work.
Nice.
Even these days, you're writing a game to work for like 50,000 players. Well, you don't really have 50,000 computers there or bots to test it with. So you're just testing and looking at factors and saying, yeah, this looks like it'll do the job.
Right. Does the code for any of this stuff still exist?
I have no idea. That was all left behind when they cut us loose. They let us keep our Ataris, but basically everything else belonged to the company. And I was basically taking every project I worked on, sealing it up in manila envelopes, labeling them, and setting them aside to be put into the archives, which they apparently made it into the archives. But that's another story. When I started getting threatening emails.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this. So your website kind of says, "Stop threatening me." It looks like maybe you wrote this more than a decade ago, but you're kind of like you're sick of people sending you angry emails demanding things. Tell me about that, please.
Apparently, because I worked there, I was obligated to send these strangers everything and anything I had that I worked on when I was working for Atari. And they were pretty anal about it. Some were nice, some were anal about it. And it was like, this is nuts. First of all, I don't have any of that. And anyway, the stuff I did have, I actually donated to one of the museums. I don't remember who it was, but like the Warlords stuff. I still had a copy of that, so I sent that up, and a few other odds and ends. I actually, it was a long story, but I actually had Disney artists had a strike about the time, first year I think it was at Atari, and we had hired 2 of those artists. And they actually did a book, and they basically I had a copy of it, and that got scanned so that people could have the scans, and then I sent the original over to one of the chief engineers, which had his project in it, and I haven't seen it since because I kept it safe, and it went on its merry way. Otherwise, it would have disappeared into the black hole.
I would like to talk about Omni Wheel, the toy robot ball.
That wasn't mine, but it was basically a hamster ball, so you could attach things to it. Another engineer worked in that.
But you wrote some software for it, I believe.
No, not for the Omni Wheel.
Okay.
I did write software. Somebody was working on a marine tank project with the smart AI fish, and I wrote a high resolution animation to go at the bottom of the tank with some ferns flowing and things like that.
Right. I recently interviewed Valerie Atkinson, now
Okay.
Manful, and she wrote the fish part of that, the swimming fish, and so you wrote the graphics for the The
the
coral and the ferns and things?
Yeah, I don't know if the two were ever merged together because again, the end of Atari days.
Right.
But mine was a self-contained module. I had designed an animation module that could be reused on other projects, and it was a high-resolution fish tank bottom. So the fish basically had the entire top of the tank, and I just hijacked. I had control of the bottom of it.
Nice.
Somewhere that I think my website's got a picture of it.
I've seen the picture of it. I've also seen a picture of it, a single screenshot of it running. Apparently, I guess somebody grafted the parts together and it ran as a demo at a SIGGRAPH conference.
Oh, cool.
But I don't have that video. I wish I did.
Okay, yeah, on my website I put a picture of the main tank, and somebody did some very tall ferns as part of it, but mine was the little small skinny part just at the bottom because I stayed out of the fish path. Trying to do blitting and transparency, cookie cutting on an Atari was not really doable, and sprites were not an option.
Right. Let's see. All right, other things. You said at one point another 5200 game that was ripped and ported was the game Quicks, but there was a bug, so it was never
Oh yeah,
solved and published.
yeah, it wasn't out there, and I was trying it, and again, these were like not primary projects; these were like side projects that I was
Sure.
going with, and something I missed in the disassembly, and ran out of time, and so never did solve that.
So how much of the,
if everything runs and all of a sudden everything goes crazy or crashes, you miss something somewhere.
Sure. So how much of this job was people handing you a project like, we want to research this, we're working on, and how much of it was just you having fun trying to find your own things to work on?
Project Puffer, I think that was like a 4 or 6 month project. That was somebody else's that I was working on. The AI Fish project, that was me saying, hey, I can do a bottom for that tank. The paper, that was something I did on my own. The aspect ratio, did that on my own. There were a few other projects. Warlords, that was me on my own. So yeah, mostly it was stuff. I was there to assist the engineers, but I was allowed to work on my own stuff.
Nice. And you were there for, looks like, just about 2 years, from April '82 until the Trammels sent you on your way.
Yeah, I was also doing other stuff because there was another person in another group, but not in corporate research, and but he had access to the same equipment I did. For a while there, because I was starting to do some stuff with 2600. I don't remember what, but I had the Contran future data systems, and we were basically trading some stuff back and forth.
Tell me about your end of times at Atari. Did you see it coming, or was the layoff unexpected?
Actually, I got cut too soon. I think I was in the second wave of cutoff, and it was like boom, and that's because Trammell was taken over, and basically I was running around calling operations, requesting boxes, helping other people go out the door, because that's just the way it was, helping others. And then eventually packed my stuff up, and my stuff was already packed up, ready to go and labeled, and it was a sad time. We even had like a reunion like 20 years later.
Nice.
Didn't recognize anybody, almost anybody, until they spoke. Oh, are you?
You hear their voice, and
yeah.
And then after they let you go, they hired you back to try to convert Atari Writer to cartridge.
Oh, well, yeah, I forgot about that. Technically, in the next layoff, they laid off the others, but I was the kind of person they were keeping. By then, it was too late. Yeah, basically, but that was like one meeting. They called me in. Basically, one of the Trammell brothers wanted to put Atari cartridge, a Atari writer on the computer, not on the cartridge, because I think it was cartridge, not computer based, and they're trying to save money or something. But the problem was, I explained to him it's too big. There was no easy way to do that, and so I didn't take the project.
Getting back to the software that you're tired of people asking you about, in 2002, we had an email exchange, and you said, I have Atari stuff I created. It's locked away, and it's Atari discs in storage somewhere in my personal Indiana Jones vault that we call a garage. um, uh, Mostly economical development tools, along with developer manuals, etc. So is that the stuff that ended up at in a museum?
Yeah, that's the stuff that went to the museum.
Cool. Well,
It
trying to
was,
figure out which museum, Computer History Museum in the Bay Area, or
I honestly don't remember. I'd
okay,
have to go back in time.
just curious.
I corresponded with quite a bit. I actually sent him the drawing book, and he scanned it, and then sent me back the scans and the book. And then when I was in the Bay Area, I dropped the book off at one of the engineers' offices.
Hmm.
He wasn't there. I left it in with the note. I think he was on vacation or something. And I was only there for the day.
So what haven't I asked about your time at Atari that I should have?
It was cool. Uh, they had some great, I forget the Friday parties or every other Friday parties. Um, it was a great time. Lots of cool stuff were being made. We had some fabulous people that worked there, and I'm still friends with many of them.
Nice.
You think they'd forgotten about me because I was just an associate engineer. I was like, oh yeah, hey Jim, how you doing? Even Alan Kay, he's a bigwig, and he still remembers who I am. And I was just a minion at his company.
You mentioned something about pitch correction software.
Oh, that was Project Hummer.
Tell me about that.
Basically, it was the electronic music instrument. I don't remember who was working on it. I'm really bad with names. But if you basically hummed into this musical instrument, it would pitch correct. So you could be a lousy hummer way off key, and this would pitch correct and basically put you back on key. Don't know what, I heard rumors of it being worked on after the fact, but I have no idea what happened to it.
Neat. I haven't heard about that. That Kovacs had a product called Voice Master, and you could hum into it, and it would change it into notes on the computer that you could play back.
If you think about it, that's essentially the same thing, because you need to take in the input into some kind of vector frequency that you could play back.
What do you do today?
All sorts of things. I worked for lots of great companies. Worked for Lucasfilm for 4.5 years. Worked for Midway for several years. Currently working as a contractor for GDLS, work on robotic equipment. The last job I loved was actually as employee was with Xperi. Basically, anybody that goes to, well, used to go to the movies, but if you look at your DVD and Blu-ray collection and look in the back, down the bottom, it'll either say Dolby or it'll say DTS. DTS is Xperi. And it's one of the divisions. For me, it was optimizing the algorithms, making it faster for the portable devices. And if you can make it faster, that also means it uses less battery power.
Sure.
So the batteries last longer.
Looking at your website, it says you bounced around and at Atari and were finally end up attached to the robotics group, but nothing that we've really talked about except for the rolling ball screams robotics to me.
Yeah, I didn't understand it either because I didn't work on robotics, but I was attached to the robotics group. And that was basically the Dixon brothers, although we rarely talked. Um, and I heard they went on to do some cool stuff. Again, I think that was just for company architecture.
Sure. I don't know the name, the Dixon brothers. I don't think I've come across that before. Do you?
Uh, Basically, they had done some kind of taken a wheelchair and roboticized it. And somebody at Atari Corporate Research hired them. And they came in and they were continuing their development along similar lines. And then I stumbled across one of them, or they stumbled across me not so many years ago. And I think they were in China or they were in Japan working on some kind of robotics toy. I think it looked like a centipede or something. I forget. So there's at least one of them is still working at it. The last I saw them, but I don't remember the names. Just the Dixon brothers. So Dixon had to be their last name.
Sure. What haven't I asked you about your time at Atari that I should have?
Nothing I can think of. I think we covered almost everything I worked on. It actually added, having worked with all those people actually made me a somebody to cheap hire. I didn't even have a bachelor's degree at the time. I had attended several community colleges, but kind of stalled. And the fact they did that made me want to be like them. And then when a couple of them started writing books, I started writing books. So it's like I've got 3 published. Only one of them is still in print, barely in print. The books out there.
Which one is that?
Well, there's 3 of them.
Yes.
The first, okay, when I first thought about the idea, it was the death and rebirth of the x86 assembly language programmer. Really long title, because it's like you had the AMD and the Intel wars, and they were all different, and they didn't share. So I finally, when I was working for Acres Gaming up doing casino gaming up in Corvallis, Oregon, for the first year there, I started writing the book, and then at the end of that, I was there for a year, so I was a resident, so I was full-time going to school at Oregon State University, and the book went at home. After the fact, when I went to work for another, they had laid us all off, went to work for another gaming company over down here near Thousand Oaks, where I live. I actually found the books were a big thing, so I actually found Woodware Publishing actually signed me on, and for well, they named it. They didn't like my name. Vector game math processors. What the is that? Anyway, it was based upon multiple processors and doing SIMD, basically parallel processing on these processors. And when you didn't have it, how you could simulate it and make it fast. In the middle of that, a friend was telling me about shaders. And while still writing that book, they signed a contract with me for a shader book. So as soon as I finished that one, I did the shader book, and we got those out. And mine was complete. Microsoft was shipping shaders out there that was full of mistakes, and they were their books were wrong. And then mine actually error corrected. But technically, you would use their stuff to do it, and use mine to do it correctly. But that was short-lived. And then after that, I wanted to push the x86 book, and they said, "Nah, it's not gonna sell. I'm not gonna sell." And I actually spent a year writing the first book, the vector book, and so it was well polished to be on the train every morning and in the evenings, and I knew which train had the electrical power, and just looking at the rivets on the outside of the unit. And then a couple of years later, they go, "Okay, but it's got to be it has to include 64-bit, and it's got to be done in 6 months." So rush job. Had it done in 6 months, but it's very comprehensive, but it's got lots and lots of mistakes. But I still refer to it from time to time. And it's still a print, barely. Used to make money with them. Now it's like, well, maybe we'll send you a check, maybe we don't. You're not quite at that threshold yet. But anyway, and you try. Occasionally, I'll go online, I'll buy a used book, and I'll give them away. In fact, funny story. When I was at Channel Islands working on finishing my degree, that I'm like the old guy on campus. It's later years in life, and the guys in the math in the computer lab called me, and they had a problem. I'm walking in the door. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch my copy of my book sitting on the shelf, and I'm laughing my head off. And I go, "What's so funny?" And I go, "That's my book. I don't mean it's mine. I bought it. I mean, it's mine. I wrote it." And so they go, "Well, sign it." So I signed it, gave it to them. Then I came in the next day and gave them the missing copies they didn't have. Anyway,
Nice.
I digress.
Nice. All right. If you could send a message to the people who are still using their Atari computers today, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
I don't know if they're developing. I've got friends like Mean Hamster, who's actually developed games into the future. I've helped them on some other projects. It was a fun. It was a fun platform. Did a lot of things with it. Even built little adaptations. It's like taking RAM cartridges and putting write protect switches on them, so you could like plug them in, flip the write protect switch, and you could basically you bring it up, you throw the write protect switch, you load the ROM into it, you flip the switch, you power cycle it, voila, you got a cartridge game. Woohoo! Lots of stuff you could do with it. There's even 6502 groups out there, mostly focusing on, I'm a member of the group, mostly just watching. But they're focusing on trying to simulate it on the Chem one, not so much on the Atari equipment. Not even so much on the Apple equipment, but maybe that's other websites. I don't know.
Yes, there's other emulators and simulators for everything now. It was really hard for me to get you for an interview, and I don't know if you have been busy for the last 6 years or just haven't been getting my emails, but my goodness, you were a challenge.
Sorry. I don't know. Maybe it's something is like, maybe it's time I finally did it, because I didn't feel like I was the big guy there. I was just the little guy, and I had an insight. And even though I've had a wonderful life working for lots of great companies, some not so great companies, but a lot of great companies, a lot of great people. And it was like, well, get my spin on out there. Things change. People remember things differently. So maybe get my part out there before I disappear.
I'm glad that you did. Thank you. I appreciate your time today, Jim. Thank you.
Not a problem. It's been fun. Thank you.